Hi everyone, welcome to another week's forecast. Sorry, this one's a little bit late, but okay, let's get into the energies. So earlier this week, there's a sense of things brewing up. So it's like the cauldron is turning and it's brewing and it is absolutely over stewing the stew, so to speak. So instead of just a nice little cooking and a nice little simmer, it's more of a simmering and rising of the energies, right? So there's a lot of throat chakra emphasis, I feel. So a lot of this has got to do with Mercury. A lot of this has got to do with communication. Mercury being in retrograde is one aspect, but there's also other aspects as well. So I feel that in relationships, that there have been, and not just speaking of right now, but like recently or in recent times, there have been aspects of relationships and communication which have been difficult, challenging to say the least. It feels like a rising within you of something that wants to be expressed and to let go of. But it's important to understand that in your relationships, if you don't get your point across, if you don't get those inner reflections expressed, then they can really backfire and show up in other ways and be mirrored in amplified ways, which you don't want. Trust me, you don't want to face that. So people will be showing you a mirror and you them. So it works reciprocally. But I feel that there's really an actual hidden opportunity to improve certain relationships. And of course, we're speaking about particular relationships here. Some won't matter so much and some will be more important, but you'll know specifically which relationship this is to do with. And it will feel like if you just spend a little time reflecting on things and allowing what's been brewing to rise up for you to discover and understand, and then expressing it in some way, or finding ways to, like, I guess, new ways to connect or reconnect with what you have learned in mind. And it will feel like now it's not necessarily like perfect, oh my God, everything's going to be great, but it is leading towards that. So it's this uncomfortability at the moment or recently that has a message, a hidden message. So when you're feeling like that, always remember that specifically at the moment that it's for a reason, and that things will change, and that there is definitely this feeling of an ushering in of change. But the funny thing about it is it's not necessarily now, this week, it's coming. So this sort of impending sense of change coming, just like you would have felt at other times with energy shifts, sometimes impending doom, right? Or a combination. But the feeling here is of really working towards improving structures in your life, things, and acknowledging things that are not working. When things get difficult, just retreat, release things out to God. So give to God, right? Give out all your worries, talk to Spirit, and allow them to help you. Okay, so here we have the number 13 again, and I talked about the number 13 last week. And the number 13 is really about death, change, endings. And I really discovered that that 13 card, that death skeleton card that I talked about last week, really was reflected in the terrible Halloween energy that a lot of us were feeling very intensely. And I wrote about that on my Facebook page. And so literally there was death energy during that time, but also in the metaphor of a snake shedding its skin for us individually, right? So we're continuing this process of transformation, because all that leads to the idea of death, closing of chapters, letting things go, leads to the transformation. We're not quite there yet, as I said. So there's a feeling that sort of you're holding on for dear life. Or I always see this card as she's holding on to her baggage, quite literally, physically, metaphorically holding on, right? Or those last few belongings, or what's meaningful. It depends how you look at it, right? But it's actually a statue head that she's holding on to. and it's dark, so it's like the past. Okay, now the feeling I get here is you don't want to hold on to negative baggage or the past. You want to process it and allow that divine light and that spark and that new time of transformation that's on the horizon to shine a light on that so that you can process it. Because they're showing me now, last week I mentioned the snake shedding its skin, but imagine if some of that skin was stuck and couldn't shed off, and it was actually stuck to the snake's body, and then it starts to infiltrate, right, like energy does. And that reminds me of an experience I had this morning where I was speaking to someone on the phone, and she really was not being of customer service, and I just felt her to be really rude. And then I got really annoyed very quickly, and I told her that she was being rude, and I hung up on her. And just that feeling afterwards, that feeling of just being so mad, and her energy just infiltrating through my body. You know, she's just a regular person, you know, she's not like a massive energy vampire or anything like that, but boy, did it like infiltrate, right, like through the veins. And I feel that there's a message in that. We can allow other people's toxicity, anger, or whatever personality faults to infiltrate us, and especially us who are very empathic, who take it on. So my whole body is just like, you know, in this lower frequency. But, you know, I've been able to release that. So do you want to fester is the point. So I talked about this brew that's rising, right? You don't want to fester in the brew. You want to allow it to process and keep moving like energy. Clear it up and clear it out. Another card that came up was the end of the cycle. So it really matches the 13 that we've been talking about. Okay, we're still in this process of endings, but see how now this person / angel there is sitting just sort of restfully in the you know, in the early evening as the sun's coming down, and there's no feeling of resolution, right? It still feels like, so there's a lot of pondering still, a lot of reflecting, and a lot of darkness still, even though it's a beautiful setting. So I'm feeling that with that, there's a sense of, as I said, holding things off, you know, processing things. The universe is doing its thing. The universe is turning around, spinning and spitting things out, I'm hearing. Literally like a tornado, okay? It's like a tornado, a gust of wind that comes in, wishes out and gusts out. This is what we've been going through, a lot of 5, which is chaos, confusion, and generally, you know, October, moving into November, you know, but there's a lot of mixture of that sense as well as the coming light, which we're not quite in a massive energy shift right now where the light's streaming in and we really feel it, but it's on the horizon, as I was saying. So we've just walked through and we're walking out of, but we're still in that mid phase of walking out of whatever battle or conflict, whether it's inner or outer or both, okay? But there's that light there, and so that's what I love about this card. See the light there, the candle at the bottom, okay? It's the light of hope. Now, what I'm also guided to now is, instead of, usually I like to think of walking away, like, you know, into the horizon from a conflict, but it's, you know, but it's actually going downstairs. So I'm reading that right now as going into one's shadow self, okay? So don't be scared to look at the ugly. I cannot stress it enough, okay? That stuff that's going on within you, that is rising up, that's difficult to deal with, to see. You know what that means for you. It could be about loved ones in your life. It could be about yourself, your whole life, your job, feeling of restlessness and unfulfillment, okay? That's all part of it. So, you know, you need to look in to be able to move out and go through the process to then move beyond. So that's the message in that. Structure and order is something that we're really like struggling with. So on one hand, you will have had phases in the last few weeks or months where you feel like you're just starting to get things together and you're just starting to feel motivated, and to-do list and da-da-da-da-da-da, when that light comes in, and then boom, whack, you're down, right? And it all changes, and then you don't know whether you're Martha or Arthur or who or what. And that's when there's a feeling of stagnation, and then you feel blocked, and then it just goes on and on from there. My cat always comes in when I'm doing the readings. Of course, he was sleeping all day until I did this. Okay, so hello, buddy. Do you want to say hello? Yeah? Say hello? Okay, so through this card, what I'm feeling is that this card represents foundations also, but looking back at the past, looking at your family, looking at your home, looking at your upbringing, even going back to your childhood. I've talked about that in recent videos, sort of that inner child feeling as well. But see how it's very structured, this house. It's very like, foundational, because we've got the number 4 there. So, and then there's this rainbow over the house, which is happiness, which is, fond memories, which is a positive sign. So I feel that it represents changes to come, and once you process all the gunk, to look back, to be grateful for what you've learned. That some people find that so hard, to be grateful for the shitty stuff, right? But if you really just step out of the shit and into the light and allow it to shine on you, the process of self-discovery is stronger than any other process, and that's what we just have to face and learn. There is going to be a time of accelerated motion and energies. In a weird way, things are kind of a little bit fast, but they're mostly slower right now. So, and that's that real retrograde feeling as well, isn't it? But it's like there's a double play on things. So the world feels a bit more tense and intense and dense. But we are to just work through that and be patient through that period. Once that we pass and can just start breathing again naturally, then it feels like now we can move into the more positive but practical aspects of change, where you are making choices and figuring out which avenue you want to go. Okay, so for some that's to do with marriage, for others work, personal life, personal family, spirituality, or that crossing over between work and spirituality / life and lifestyle, or whatever it is for you. Okay, projects, goals, and so on. Be careful not to lean into the darker energies, but to make choices that are of the light and using your greatest discernment, I would say. And that includes financial and material changes, which are on the horizon too. And it's looking more hopeful down the track, but we're still going through elimination and closings. So that's an important aspect as well. You would have felt this feeling of drive and momentum at times that then became blocked. So it's like the chariot's moving forward, you're on your horse and you're like, oh, finally I can breathe and there's light and yay, I'm going for it and I know what I'm doing and I'm focused. And then, as I said before, a massive boulder comes and your whole carriage, if not halts, then falls apart. So it's important in that time to just realign, come back to your grounding and your realignment and your protection. And that's where I come to the point of the stone for this week, which is beautiful lapis lazuli, which is a highly spiritual psychic stone, very protective. And for me, it's a grounding psychic stone actually, which I'll talk about another time in more detail. But another thing about this stone is that it will help you work through your emotions. So not a lot of people think about that aspect of lapis lazuli, but it's really because it's known to be such a powerful kind of stone and used by the Egyptians and really sort of third eye and psychic and all that stuff, and very exotic in that way. However, when it comes to processing emotions and not being fearful of it, that's where this stone comes into play. So use it this week to help you learn from your lessons, deal with the emotions, rather than pushing them aside or not wanting to process it, because you have to be courageous to look in and work through to then peel yourself off and be free from, okay? And they're saying it's not 5 steps ahead. It's, 1 forward, 10 back sometimes, but you will get there, okay? So that's an important thing. So let's look at the first half of the week versus the second half of the week. So the first half of the week, there's a sense of sort of secretiveness and mystery and tension and intensity mixed with emotional sensitivity, power struggles, that's that relationship thing, assertion of dominance and, who's the boss, right? And then, this uncomfortable feeling is when your goals can feel hindered. So then moving through that sort of emotionally sensitive period, watch out for mood swings and also that feeling of that I mentioned before, the stew that's brewing. So work through that stewing brew, pour in the light, process it out. Be physical, so release through exercise. And then the second half of this week, really focus more now on, so after you've had that feeling of letting go, then, yeah, that's my cat scratching on the door. Find ways to be more disciplined and have more drive and work on what you need to while staying grounded and practical on the earthly realms. Use that fascinating mind of yours to lean into the mysterious side of the universe, to learn, study, research, and do some deep thinking, and then expand that energy outwards from there. And take time to slow down, have some deep relaxation, some nice deep salt baths and that kind of thing, just to really settle your energy and bring it back to earth, because that frenetic stew brewing energy is a little bit erratic. So we want to calm it down, pull it down and make it more earthy, and then release it that way. Okay, so they're the main points for this week, and I'll talk soon about the following week.